BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
5 Live Boxing.
Your legacy's in bits.
Even in my worst times, you still hit like a. I didn't
no
feel
one's
nothing.
even believed you.
I didn't feel anything. You were wondering why I kept getting up, because I didn't feel nothing. You have no power. You're not a knockout artist.
Well, I knocked you out, didn't I, Dosser?
Nah, I went out on my feet.
That's a knockout.
I had a disloyal trainer to throw the towel in. And guess what? When someone throw the towel in, after the boss tell them not to do, the employee get fired.
Yeah, but you said I had knuckle dusters on. JD is in the room while I had the gloves on. Why didn't he say something then? He's in on it too.
Don't worry about him.
He's in on it.
Don't worry about him. I handle my team like I handle my team.
He's in on it too.
You handle yours like you handle yours.
You're a weak man. You get knocked out.
Thank you.
End of.
Thank you. I'm the one that defended my title 10 times.
I don't need to defend titles.
How many times have you defended?
That's for Dossers like you. Dossers like you defend them. I don't need to.
I've never had to cheat in years.
I've come here representing
If you look up your history and you look up my history, which I advise everyone to do their homework.
Dressed as me on a training day.
You look up you and you look up me. I'm a nun in this sport, baby.
You ain't nothing.
I don't have to cheat.
You will only ever...
Welcome to the 5 Live Boxing Podcast. I'm Steve Bunt and I'm still in Las Vegas. It's Wednesday and they finally got together. They didn't quite come face to face because it was the final press conference, but there was no face to face. In fact, it was a really bizarre press conference. I'm going to tell you the truth. It was a really odd press conference. So much so that there were 2 5-minute advert breaks where the two of the fighters, Deontay Wilder on one side and Tyson Fury on the other side, just sat in absolute silence for 5 minutes. And then once the person who was introducing it and hosting it, once she kicked up again, they started. For the first 2 sessions, neither of them bit, neither of them reached any level. There was no excitement. It was flat. And then finally, in the third segment, as you just heard, it did start to, for want of a better expression, kick off. It got lively. It got noisy. Fury got closer and closer. Still not too close. And then Wilder did bite, and don't worry, he did bite. Now, it wasn't the LA conference in 2018, which saw Tyson Fury's brother Shane run to the ring with his broken foot. Run to the stage with his broken foot and try and jump up on the stage. It wasn't even last year's press conference here in Las Vegas, which got particularly vicious and nasty and was ugly. But there was quite a good 3 or 4 minutes of looking and screaming, and I just sensed that. You could hear something in Fury's voice. He was serious, and Wilder was edging. He never moved. He never got out of his seat. But at the same time, I could just sense, and his people behind him are just getting a bit closer to him. There was a decision made at the end not to have a head-to-head, face-to-face, get close. No, a decision was made by Bob Arum. Tyson looked a bit shocked and shrugged his shoulders, but there wasn't to be a head-to-head, which is, hey, that's understandable, because who knows, with that recent head-to-head where Saul Canelo Alvarez managed to catch Caleb Plant. They fight each other, they will fight each other at a press conference and cut him under the eye. There was no chance of that happening here. So there was no head-to-head. It was lively. And so that ended about 12, 15 minutes ago. There's still some people milling around doing interviews. And I've managed to drag ESPN's Mark Kriegel away to have a little chat. Mark, simple question, really, the first question. What did you make of that?
I expected pretty much what would be. I figured Deontay, you'd have to pull it out of him, but then he would dwell on the violence and the blood and the retribution, and then Tyson would carry the rest of it, because Tyson is a born entertainer, among other things. He's the most mobile heavyweight of our time, and has the greatest verbal dexterity as well. You know, I mean, it really is. I mean, I remember telling guys after I interviewed him the first time, if Deontay knocks him out, this is on the eve of the first fight.
Yep.
If Deontay knocks him out, he will be the single greatest WWE guy in the history of WWE.
That's
guys.
to come. He's promised us that.
And I meant it.
Yeah, no, yeah. The
I don't get many things right, Steve.
No, we're the same. But what we have is a feeling. That's why I always tell people. People say to me, Bunce, you got that one wrong. And I said, yeah, but you know what? I made a good case for it being the other way. How about that? I'm allowed to use that. I thought it was very low-key. I mean, as you say, it was about what I expected. But I did think at the end that Wilder just bit, with the expression bit, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Not like he did in Los Angeles and not like he did here last February. But I did think he rose slightly to it.
I think he bit and they engaged. It wasn't as confrontational because they were far apart.
A long way apart.
Right, and Frank and Bob made sure they remained far apart, which was an interesting choice. But listen, the most consequential guy going into this fight is the aforementioned Malik Scott. In many ways, in so many ways, he's the key figure. I spent a lot of time talking to him last week, and
we're going to hear from him in a second.
No, he says he can change Deontay Wilder, or at least bring out what he needs.
As I said, we are going to hear from Malik. In fact, we'll do it now because just one thought on Malik and Deontay up there. I sensed that Deontay's body language changed once Malik was next to him. Once Malik was sitting with him, it wasn't just smiling. He just seemed relaxed. I sort of saw his shoulders drop down, and I like that. So that tends to suggest to me that there is something here. So anyway, I caught up with Malik, and he could talk. Don't worry about that. Malik, thanks for joining us. It sounds to me like you've enjoyed your last 6 or so months working very close with Deontay. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, absolutely. And Deontay, he made sure I was able to enjoy it by being extremely receptive, by being open-minded, by creating with me as well, by helping me create. And what I mean by that is like, as a trainer, we don't see every single thing. So the communication between the fighter and trainer or teacher and student have to be high. There's times that I will be creating and he would add on to my creation, and then we'll go back down to fundamentals and continue to drill. But it all comes from him being extremely receptive, and that's what made it fun.
Also, I really like what you said, Malik, about the toolbox. The idea that the toolbox is there, the tools are in there. You just have to go and look at them again. Is that a fair? That's what it sounded like.
Absolutely, because here's a guy that could do 50, 100 different things that's suitable for his style that can make him even more dynamic. And he was only ruling with 10 defenses with one thing, with one weapon. Me being observant and the student of the game as I am, I don't allow Deontay to just be content with throwing the right hand. If we're sparring guys, right? And we'll say he heard a guy sparring, but I see him get ready to go into an over-anxious mode, I'm not even happy with it. If it's not surgical and coming from a systematic base of good foundation fundamentals, I don't even want the finish. I like when Deontay finish guys and look extremely, extremely systemized with it. Like it's coming from a base of good fundamentals, not the Ollie Harris.
Not just a big lucky
finishing.
shot.
Yes. No. Or not like the Ollie Harrison finish at the end when he's just going windmill. Yes. Because he's 10 times better than that. And that right there is an emotional state right there. That's not a skill thing to me. That's him just mentally and emotionally just overexcited and just a case of hunger, just trying to get the guy out of there. But we've worked on that. Is every mistake that Deontay Wilder making in the ring, is it gone? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But we prepared him enough that he could be very surgical. He could be very patient with a very, good fighter like Fury is, and he can knock Fury out within 5 rounds from the pace that we set him at. Deontay Wilder is extremely dangerous from round 1 to round 12, but especially in the early rounds, And in my opinion, at times Fury take his opponents for granted between 3 and 6 rounds. He starts taking his opponent for granted when he gets slight control. And with Deontay, the minute that he do that, we're going to make him pay very uncomfortably, and we're going to see if he can handle this onslaught. And we're going to say he can handle this onslaught and then go past 5 rounds or 6 rounds, my prediction. Then he'll just get beat up for 12 rounds. Either way, he's
Now, you've known Deontay a long while. You fought him an awful long time ago. Last year, February 22nd, here in Las Vegas, were you disappointed with that fight? Not obviously disappointed with the outcome of the fight, but were you disappointed with Deontay's performance last year? Because I know you're a man of truth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I wouldn't say disappointed. I feel as though he could have did. I'm going to tell you the same thing I told him. He's leaving so many tools in the toolbox. Why are we relying on 1 or 2 things when you do so many things good? And how do I know he do so many things good? Because I've been watching him in the gym for over 10 years, sparring different, all types of guys from all walks of life stylistically. And I watched him be creative with those guys. But then when he get into actual fight, he will just use one tool, or maybe two if he's feeling good, or maybe three. But he's more dynamic now. He's more open-minded than ever. He's creating more than he's ever created. And this is the best Deontay Wilder people are going to see.
And that would sound odd to people listening to this, because he obviously won the world title. He's had it a long time, made those 10 defenses. And has he been easy to deal with? Has he been receptive, Malik?
Extremely receptive. It's something far beyond my imagination, because at the beginning, when he hired me and asked me if I wanted to come on board as his head guy, I said yes. But then we had a after talk about it in the same conversation. It was like, bro, this is about you doing everything I ask. This is about you trying everything I say try. This is about you sticking to strategy, putting emotions on the side. And is all of that gone? Is all of that erased? No, but majority of it is. And that was my goal. My goal is to make Deontay a complete fighter, not a perfect fighter. You know what I mean? And that's what he's doing. He could be a complete fighter because he has a granite chin. He has a granite chin. The knockdowns, even in the Fury fight, they was very like, I don't know, they was knockdowns. He got hit and went down, but one was behind the head. One was like to the body. And his equilibrium, legs and everything was off. That wasn't Deontay in that ring. I've seen Deontay get hit and get ridiculed for having wobbly legs, getting ridiculed for being hurt. But for some reason with him, they don't give the opponent the props for having a good punch. They automatically go to what Deontay Wilder doesn't have. Case in point, people see Eric Molina hit Deontay with the right hand. They totally forget about Eric Molina as a good puncher with his right hand. He has a history. Everyone in the inner circle knows this. Eric Molina has a good right hand. Yes. But if you hit Deontay Wilder with a right hand and Deontay wobbles, then come back and knock him out, the narrative is, look, he ain't even got no chin. He almost got knocked out by pure Eric Molina. Poor old Eric Molina. When Eric Molina's a good puncher. He get in there with a tease. Get hurt, get this, get that, come back and win. The narrative is, man, that was a good fight. He almost knocked Wilder out. Wilder ain't really got a chin if you get to him. The narrative is not, he took that shot. He showed he had a granite chin. He was hurt and then came back. You get what I'm trying to say? It's always like whatever it is to make him look a little bit more minimized than he actually is. That's the narrative that they go with. And me, since I follow the beat of my own drum and move to be my own drum, I look at things for what it is. That's why I could tell you Deontay is going to knock Fury out in 5 rounds, but then I could look at you and tell you at the same time Fury is one of the best heavyweights of this era. You see what I'm saying? So just because you're one of the best heavyweights of this era, that don't mean you can't get knocked out. You see what I'm saying? Just because, like, it just doesn't mean that. Max Schmeling did a hell of a job on Joe Louis that first fight. And that just because you're great don't mean you're not food. Just because you're good don't mean you can't get clipped. Just because we're in the heavyweight division. I don't see how people don't understand how I have Deontay winning a fight or how I could possibly not see him winning. But then those same people who will say there's no way he beat Fury, in the same conversation, they'll say he's the hardest puncher in history of the sport. I'm not saying the hardest puncher in history of the sport can't beat nobody. I'm going to say, well, if Fury do what he do, if he can avoid the punch, he's going to win. But if Wilder hit him, I don't know. That should be the prediction for this fight to me from anybody from Mankind. People make it seem like he's totally outmatched. I don't get it. And then you take the power away, and I'm just looking at everything else that he does extremely well, especially now, and has been drilling and been wanting to. It's just a good thing. It's just a real good thing, man.
And finally, Malik, and thanks so much for your time. I know you've got a horde of people waiting for you. This seems to me like the start of a big journey for you and him. I know you've been together already. This seems to me like a shift in the relationship between the two of you and the start of a long journey. Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. And I'm forever indebted to Deontay for trusting in me this much, for giving me his life, for giving me for giving me an open mind. And this is just the beginning. Like, he trusted me as a trainer to say where I trust and believe in him as a fighter. And I believe come Saturday night, people are going to see a Deontay Wilder that they never seen before. He's going to be elusive. He's going to be fast. He's going to show humility. He's going to show a lot of different things that people didn't see. And I can't wait to see it.
So, Mark, that's Malik there, dipping into Deontay Wilder's toolbox, moving stuff around and coming out with a different hammer.
Look, Deontay is a great athlete. If you can pick up boxing at 19 years old, become heavyweight champion of the world, you're a great athlete. We know what tools are needed here. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. And by the way, on the eve of the last fight, Mark Breland told me exactly what he had to do, which began with use your damn jab. You've got a good jab. use it. He did not. And if you look at the CompuBox numbers, or the eye test, however you want to parse this thing, Wilder has been, certainly since Fury, relying more and more and more, playing for that single right hand. You know, it was most evident in the Ortiz fight, and you're not going to be able to do that with Tyson Fury. Here's what I got on Malik Scott. This decision was made the night of the last fight, about 4 a.m.
After they left the arena.
After they left the arena, Deontay Wilder, I don't know when this will run, but it's my column coming out on Friday. Deontay Wilder calls Malik and says, I'm making changes. I want you to be the head trainer. And instead of, now remember, Malik's been in like the crew.
Been in the arena,
but he's never been a head trainer. He's never
of course.
run a corner before. He's a good boxer. He knows the game. But this is a big job, and it's a lot of money. But before he took the gig, he said, okay, but you've got to look in the mirror. In other words, could be the suit, could be this, could be that, whatever you believe, that's fine. But you didn't lose a boxing match, Deontay, my brother. You got your ass beat.
Yep.
You were beat up, and you have to recognize that before we can enter this sort of contract. The second thing is, you got to look at Tyson Fury. He's not a normal heavyweight. He is the most mobile heavyweight of this or any era, perhaps since Ali. You've got to realize what you're dealing with. And obviously, they reached an agreement, means that at some level, whatever Deontay puts on the 40-pound suit, the conspiracy with the gloves, whatever else.
Yep.
You know, Mark Breland, he recognized certain things had to change. And what really struck me in our conversation was Malik's like a film nerd. I didn't know this, but he's up all night watching the damn films.
He mentioned at the press conference today.
Right, but
film studies.
But he was very specific in the references he chose with me. I hope I'm not scooping myself again, but the fights that he thought were particularly valuable, Bo Holyfield 2, where Holyfield changed his rhythm and punched off a new rhythm. It was a very subtle change, but it was a change nonetheless.
Having lost the first one.
Schmeling Lewis 2, going back to 1930,
that's what he mentions there. Yeah,
1938,
absolutely.
where when Lewis has him in trouble, instead of going headhunting, he bangs him to the body, smashes his ribs. I thought something was really interesting. He goes, George Foreman. When George Foreman had an opponent hurt, he didn't step to him like you're taught in boxing.
Yep.
He walked to him. I go, what do you mean walking to him? He says, like you're taking out the trash, like you're going to the store, you're going to get a sandwich. I go, is that what you want Deontay to do? No, but I want him to remain that unexcited. Because when he has the opponent hurt, he gets excited.
And falls over his feet,
Correct,
falls over his hands,
and
falls over the opponent.
So that I thought it was, he has very specific ideas in mind. It's very difficult to disagree with his assessment. The question is, if you're there on fight night and you get cracked by Tyson Fury, are you going to go back to being Deontay Wilder that you've always been, or are you going to maintain your composure? And that's when Malik Scott will or will not earn his money.
And that's also when we'll find out what Malik Scott can do. Not even will he earn his money. The fact is, as you say, he doesn't have a history of being in corners in fights where his 58 seconds, 55 seconds in the corner is important. In fact, it can change a fight. Some of the greatest fight trainers in history, Manny Stewart, Angelo Dundee, changed the course of several massive fights because of what they could perform in that time. We don't know if Malik can do that. And it's not a criticism of Malik. We don't know. We can't be critical of something we have no idea about.
What's really interesting is like a lot of guys, after their first loss, they turn to a guy who's already established, like a brand name.
Yes.
You know, Cotto went to Freddie Roach, Klitschko and Lennox went to Emmanuel Stewart. He's going to a guy in his crew. So it raises another question, which is, can you be coached by your best friend?
Yeah.
You know, can you be coached by a guy you consider a brother? I don't know, but we're going to find out.
But you know the expression, he talks a good fight. Malik talks an exceptional fight. And as you mentioned there, Mark, and it's a really good point you've made there, you can't disagree with anything that Malik says. However, him knowing what to do and him getting Deontay Wilder to do it and it working, they're 2 or 3 different things, maybe even more than 2 or 3 different things.
But, look, you can look at this. You can look at this 2 ways. One, he's my peer or he's on my payroll. I'm not going to listen to him. The other thing is, and I think that this is what I know about Deontay, and I've known him for a while. What is important to him is that he does trust Malik.
Yeah.
So it's not in his mind. It's not an order coming from the outside. It's not conspiratorial. It's part of his inner crew. So look, whatever makes him do the right thing makes it a fight. And I know how badly he got his ass kicked last time, but he still got a shot, especially if he uses the tools he's given. It ain't that hard to jab.
No. I'm not sure. You mentioned there, especially how badly he got beaten last year. I'm not convinced that Wilder feels he was badly beaten last year. I mean, he's constantly failed to give Tyson Fury any praise for a massive shift in tactics, for a massive risk-taking strategy. He's failed to give him any praise. At the press conference today, he talked about him basically being feather-fisted again. I mean, I haven't heard, and maybe you have.
I saw blood coming out of his ear.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard a single piece of praise is maybe too strong a word, but even just a bit of respect for what Fury managed to do in that second fight. And that kind of alarms me.
No, I agree with you, and it goes against what Malik said. Malik told me was the genesis of all this. Listen, you've got to look yourself in the mirror, and you've got to look at him clear-eyed. But there's as you know probably better than I do, there's a big difference between the heavyweight champions, or this level, I'll call them both champions, okay? But that guy's persona and what he's really thinking. So if he's conning the rest of the world, okay. If he doesn't want to give Tyson any credit, okay. But deep down inside, he has to be operating from a place of, if not respect, then acknowledgement. So if his rhetoric reveals how he truly feels about this, then I think he's lost. But I don't think that's the case.
So do you think, Mark, and thanks for your time, and we're coming towards the end now, do you think, and thanks for giving us Friday's scoop, we'll make sure we get that out before Friday for you, just to let you know. But again, I owe you a drink for that. Do you think there's been a point since last February when he left there and after the phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning to Malik's call, do you think there's been a point where Deontay Wilder has ever looked in a mirror and acknowledged what we're hoping he has, acknowledged that on the night he got things badly wrong, and not acknowledged on the night that Fury put into play a bold and potentially very dangerous plan? Do you think there's been, I mean, I want to believe he has done that. I want to believe he has.
According to Malik, he has.
He has. Yeah, Malik uses the mirror all the time.
According to Malik, that first night, he acknowledged what had happened and said, okay, let's proceed from there. So if the rest of it's just talk, he's got a shot. And if he does what Malik says, he's got a shot. Because, look, this isn't rocket science. You have to jab. You have to go to the body. You can't just play for a right hand with someone as extraordinarily skillful as Tyson. But you'll know if he was just conning or if there's real hubris. If he's conning us or he's conning himself, we'll know that fight night.
And we should know, in my opinion, we might know very quick in the fight. We might know from the first 30 or so seconds.
Neither guy thinks this is going to go long. I spoke to Tyson the other day. I said, he goes, I'm going to give him a worse beating than last time. And the only thing he can do is run, which is an extraordinary thing when you think about how this trilogy began. This was never supposed to be a trilogy. Yeah, this is supposed. Look, I don't know what they were saying in Britain. But over here, I mean, the gossip when they made the deal for that first fight was, okay, Tyson Fury is coming off a terrible stretch in his life. He's cashing out.
This is the right time to get him. He's still carrying 20 pounds.
Right.
He doesn't need to carry.
And look how it turned out.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I know you're not a predictions guy, neither am I. But going into the fight last year, is your mind in a different place this year going into this one than it was last year? That's a nice way of asking you to not make a prediction, make a prediction.
Yeah. You've got to consider Tyson Fury a substantial favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew what he was doing. I remember him telling me a month or so out last time, I'm going to go right through him. Come on.
None of us believed him. No one believed him.
You're not doing that. Come on. And he went right through him. So I think you have to go with him as as a substantial favorite.
And finally, we've mentioned your column on Friday. So people having listened to this, where can they read the full version?
ESPN.com.
Mark, it's been a pleasure and a delight talking to you.
Thanks, buddy.
Mark Kriegel there from ESPN, and then you can read exactly what he's told us on Friday, as he said there, which was a bit cruel. I suppose it was a bit mean, but hey-ho, he didn't have to give us his exclusives, as nice as they were. Now, about an hour or two before the press conference started, I was in the main media centre here, and bear in mind, there's still an awful lot of people here. There's still sort of 120 members of the media. So I was in there, and suddenly I looked over, and Shelley Finkel walked in. Now, Shelley Finkel is, of course, the manager of Deontay Wilder, and I thought he'd be the best man. In fact, he's the only man to talk to about what happened back in May. So just to let's remind ourselves of what did happen back in May. Back in May, this fight wasn't happening. Let's get it absolutely right. This fight was not happening. Back in May, we were heading to Saudi Arabia, you remember, for Tyson Fury. In fact, it was going to be on the 14th of August. Mick Costello had already bought himself a pair of flip-flops and some sunglasses. We headed to Saudi Arabia for the fight, the great big British domestic dust-up between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. And then that fell out of bed. And the reason it fell out of bed was because Deontay Wilder's legal team, spearheaded, inspired and led by Shelley Finkel, had decided to take their claim for a third fight, the trilogy, the one we're going to witness on Saturday, to a judge. And this judge sat in judgment at an arbitration hearing, and he ruled in favour of a third fight. He said Deontay Wilder is entitled to a third fight with Tyson Fury. That immediately and instantly scuppered the Saudi Arabian plan. That went absolutely down the toilet. Bosh, it was gone. The third fight was on. Alexander Usyk was drafted in to fight Anthony Joshua, and well, we know what happened at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to find out what's going to happen here on Saturday. So I grabbed Shelley over because I knew he'd be able to explain the whole thing. Well, he's the only man, really, that matters. And before we hear from him, I've got to say I'm going to hold my hands up again. I'm one of the people who never bothered to pick up the phone and ask him what the state of play was.
It was simple. Deontay lost the second fight with Fury. We had a rematch clause. It should have gone. The terms of the contract are not dependent on a live site. They're dependent on whatever income is there. The Fury side did not want to fight without a live gate, and we said okay. And then they used that to try and say the contract's expired because it took too long, and you can't induce someone to breach and then claim it's a breach.
The whole situation of arbitration, I'm going to hold my hands up. I was one of the hundreds of boxing media that never called you. We took the words and the assurances from people in the Tyson Fury business that there would be no problem, that we would see Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. And, hold my hands up. Never reached out to you.
Well, that was why Deontay and I felt a bit slighted, because no one seemed to want to hear the other side. And look, there are so many instances where I say to anyone, I don't expect to die, but I take life insurance. And there are things, when you go in front of an arbitrator or a judge or a jury, you have a chance. So did we have a 2%, 100%, 50%? Insure yourself. If you're making this 100-something million as you claim, why don't you at least say, let's sit down? In fairness, Frank said to me, is there a number? I said, I'm not giving you a number. If you want to do something, try to do it. In fairness, Frank tried.
But at that point, would you have listened to a number, or was there no number in your head, Shelley? Because this is one of the crucial elements of pre-arbitration hearing and post-arbitration hearing.
Pre-arbitration, I had no number in my head. But I'm a fool if I don't listen. I could always say no. And if someone came to me with a big number, whatever big is, it's my obligation as Deontay's manager to present it to him. And could we have tweaked it? Could we have added, a fight or this or that? Never went to that, and that was fine, because our goal was to win the arbitration. But you can't put blinders on in case there is another option.
So once the arbitration was over, it's a different situation with numbers.
Look, Deontay's dream is to get this match. I don't usually act arrogant, but I do believe Deontay's going to knock him out this time.
Can I say to you that I was very close to Wilder in the build-up to the last fight? When I say close, I mean physically close
Understood.
to him. I saw his eyes, I saw his face. He was all over this place. I'm not being an after-timer.
No.
We said this on the BBC in the build-up to the week. We were here all week, and I said, I don't like the look of Wilder.
Yep.
He's distracted. He's not concentrated. He doesn't look focused. This time, I only saw him at the Grand Arrivals yesterday from 4 feet. He looks and sounds like a different man, Shelley.
He is. Look, again, no excuses. I remember the first fight, I thought it was a long count. Doesn't matter. That's what happened. And after the fight, Fury says to me, you know, I won. I said, come on, you were knocked out. And he laughed with me. And I said, look, we'll see. Deontay, there's a thing, you probably know the term, puncher's curse.
Absolutely.
And he always says, you need 12 rounds, I need 2 seconds. But he started depending on the 2 seconds. Yeah. And if you watch the Ortiz fight, going into the round, he knocked out Ortiz. He was behind.
Yeah.
So,
losing.
Yes. So he's looking for the one punch. That's not what's going to happen this Saturday. Sure. You will see someone who is sizably bigger, sizably stronger, disciplined, has done what is necessary. If Fury can still beat him, then Fury's the better man. I don't believe that'll happen. We'll see.
Just a couple of things. First thing, if Deontay were to land, find that 2 seconds, break the puncher's curse, and take care of Fury, if that were to happen, what's the situation with a full fight?
There is no rematch. This is it.
This is it.
This is
open
it.
to negotiation.
Anything is.
Of course.
Yes. There was a Jack Nicholson was in a movie, and in the movie they said, "What is fair?" And he said, "Whatever you can negotiate," and that's what fair is.
That's our business.
Yes. And after the fight, I don't think Fury's going to want any more of Deontay, but if he does, and we can't get Joshua and Usyk because they're fighting each other, who knows? But my gut is we will have seen the last of each other this fight.
And finally, Shelley, I think I first spoke to you at some Evander Holyfield fight back in the late 80s in Atlantic City, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that's how I can remember talking to you quite clearly. You've been around a long time. I want to choose my words carefully, were you a bit disappointed with some of Deontay's whole list of excuses and reasons for losing the second fight? Because they range from the valid to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, they range to quite extremely odd. Let's put it that way.
I can't speak for someone else. I can only speak for myself. And you go in the ring. I believe some of the things that may have sounded crazy weren't as crazy, but I wouldn't have discussed them.
No.
Look, someone asked me, my kids are the greatest kids ever born. When I'm at home, I tell them the truth. So, that's what it is.
Listen, it's a pleasure and a delight to talk to you. It really is.
Mutual.
Thank you so much for your time.
And I look forward to your next column.
You might very well be in it. So Shelley Finkel there, clearing up an awful lot of stuff from earlier this year, a lot of stuff that we didn't know, a lot of stuff that we took for granted, a lot of stuff that we didn't know that he's now cleared up. Very interesting from Shelley there. So we're 3 or 4 days in. I've seen Tyson Fury in Bob Arum's office. He was brilliant. You heard the interview. And then I saw him at the Grand Arrivals. That was Tuesday. He was equally relaxed, wearing one of his designer suits. And then today here, he was as relaxed as then perhaps. But he needs these press conferences. He needs these moments where he can be the entertainer, where he can be the Tyson Fury that people want. Now, what was pointed out to me, and I'd forgotten, of course, is that there's never a crowd at a press conference. It's just the media. Although Tyson Fury always plays as though he's talking to thousands and thousands. They weren't here today. And I'm not saying he got agitated, but he had to go at Wilder just to get a reaction from Wilder. And then Wilder gave him that reaction. That would have made Tyson Fury happy. Equally, Deontay Wilder's people, including Malik Scott, who we've heard from, they'll be happy that Deontay Wilder didn't really bite. And I know one thing, as impressed as I was with Tyson Fury on Monday, this is a different Deontay Wilder. I was up close and personal with Deontay Wilder last time when we were in Las Vegas. He wouldn't do an interview after the main press conference. He wouldn't do an interview after the weigh-in. But he was agitated. He had no focus. He was all over the place. He looked a bit odd. He looked a bit scary. He wasn't focused. He wasn't here. He wasn't there. We talked about that non-stop on the podcast in the build-up to last year's first fight. Well, he's a different Wilder this time. I got a good close look at him. I stood 3 foot from him for 20 minutes whilst people were talking to him on Tuesday at the thing called Grand Arrivals. And I'm telling you, he's clear, he's focused, he's concise. And, well, you heard from Malik Scott. That's a clear, focused and concise man. You also heard from Mike Riegel saying, listen, it's all very well being clear, concise and focused. That's my catchphrase, obviously, for today's pod. But you've got to be able to put it into practice. Maybe we'll get a sign at Friday's weigh-in. And it's after Friday's weigh-in that we'll have another pod. And it'll be the pod where we analyse what's happened at the weigh-in, just in case anything odd happens, like one of them's incredibly heavy or one of them's incredibly light. But more than that, we'll take a look with a whole host of guests, which is a polite way of saying I'm not quite sure who I'm going to be able to steal from a TV company or from the retinues of the two camps. We'll hear from different people, and they'll give us a guide and an idea about just exactly what might happen once that first bell sounds on Saturday night inside the T-Mobile Arena off the Strip. Heavyweight boxing is back in Las Vegas, and we'll be back on Friday.
Let's get ready to rumble!
5 Live Boxing.